Chosen one, you didn't stumble into this moment by mistake. You were drawn here. Something inside you already knows. This isn't just another message, another video, another set of words. This is a confirmation, a mirror of what your spirit has been whispering to you all along. You were made for more than being tolerated. Look at you, carrying all that light, all that resilience, all that quiet power, and yet still wondering if you're too much or not enough. Let me tell you, you are exactly what this world has been waiting for. You're not here to just fit in. You're here to shift atmospheres. This is your time. The season of being overlooked ends here. The season of apologizing for who you are ends here. You don't need permission to shine anymore. You already have the assignment. So lean in. Feel this in your bones. Know that what's ahead of you is bigger than what's behind you. And every closed door was only making room for the right ones to swing wide open. By the time you finish this, you won't just feel inspired. You'll feel activated. Because chosen one, you're not here by accident. You are here because heaven decided it was finally time you remembered who you are. Let's go. Looking for purpose and peace? Hit subscribe and start the journey. That unsettled feeling wasn't random noise. The restlessness humming beneath the surface. The quiet discontent that won't let you sit still. These were not just moods passing through. They were signals, deliberate and precise, pointing to the edges of your growth. You didn't stumble into this unease. It was planted like a seed, waiting for you to notice. You've remained in circles that could no longer stretch to accommodate who you've become. You kept showing up in places that once embraced you, but now shrink in the presence of your unfolding self. Where you stood yesterday was enough for the version of you that existed then, but you have since outgrown its walls. What was once shelter has turned into scaffolding, useful for a time, but never meant to become the home. And the shift rarely announces itself with fireworks. It begins more subtly. The air thickens, the colors dull, the conversations lose their flavor. What once sparked your energy now feels like an echo of something you can't quite reach anymore. You notice how even familiar faces no longer light up the same corners of your heart, and how the spaces you thought you'd never leave now feel oddly foreign. This isn't a mistake. It's the quiet machinery of change setting itself in motion. You are being nudged toward a larger horizon. The scenery you clung to begins to dim not because you failed, but because it was never meant to hold your whole story. Doors don't always slam shut. Sometimes they just dissolve into silence. Paths you used to walk so easily now feel like walking through water, heavy and slow. This is not punishment, but preparation. It's not about loss, but about making room. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. The soil beneath you may crack and dry, so that you're no longer tempted to root yourself in barren ground. Relationships may thin out, and what used to feel like belonging now feels like confinement. That heaviness is not a burden. It's your potential taking shape, pressing against the limits you've outgrown. That friction you feel is the beginning of flight, not the weight of defeat. If you linger too long in what has already expired, you risk dimming your own light just to blend back into shadows that were never meant to claim you. The unease you feel is a compass, not confusion. That subtle ache isn't fear. It's the horizon calling you forward. You're not being forced out by rejection, but drawn upward by the gravity of your next chapter. This isn't collapse. It's the architecture of your becoming. And in time, it will become clear. Those rooms were never designed to contain your full wingspan. They were only ever the runway. It becomes clear eventually. Enduring spaces that only endure you in return quietly erodes your spirit. There were gatherings where your spark was noticed but treated like an inconvenience rather than a gift. Moments when your silence was mistaken for loyalty, and your brilliance became a burden to those who preferred you dim. Rooms where your body was present but your essence was unwelcome. Your contributions met with polite distance rather than true embrace. That was never reverence. It was a quiet kind of confinement. There was a time when this dissonance confused you. Standing close to others felt like purpose. Sharing air felt like alignment. But the ache grew undeniable. Being barely accepted is not the same as being cherished. You kept pouring yourself into arrangements that saw you as useful only when quiet and easy to control. They wanted the warmth you carried without the fire that created it. They wanted the calm you brought without the truth that made it possible. And when you finally allowed yourself to take up your full height, they called it arrogance. But it was simply honesty. You stopped shrinking to fit into places too narrow for your becoming. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. Those who merely endure you will always try to shrink your edges, not because you lack power, but because you wield it. Your wholeness rattles the walls they built to keep themselves hidden. Your courage exposes their hesitation. Your presence uncovers the corners they have kept in shadow. So they try to hush you, smooth you, fold you into something softer, more predictable, less threatening. But you were never meant to be softened into invisibility. You were shaped to reshape the ground you walk on. This shift is not cruelty, it is care. Not every companion can climb with you. Some reach the furthest stretch of their journey alongside yours, and their exit is simply part of the design. These ties weren't failures, they were lessons in discernment. Their season served its time, teaching you to recognize the difference between those who stay out of habit and those who stay out of love. The movement ahead of you calls for something higher, a community that doesn't just make room for you, but delights in your presence, not simply allowing you to stand at the edge, but inviting you to dance at the center. The change may feel empty at first, but that emptiness is not abandonment. It is space being cleared for what aligns. What lies beyond this threshold demands integrity, clarity, and companions who welcome your radiance without fear. You were never meant to be merely endured. That chapter is closing. What waits for you now is celebration without suspicion, recognition without resistance, and connection without competition. The transition may sting, but it is a necessary exodus into spaces that see you not as an inconvenience to manage, but as a wonder to witness. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29 verse 11. What's unfolding right now isn't just a change of scenery. It's the careful work of a master gardener, uprooting you from rocky soil and planting you in fertile ground where your roots can finally spread deep and wide. At first, it may feel like He's pruning away everything you thought made you who you are, cutting off the branches you once leaned on. But what's really happening is placement, deliberate, exact, and necessary, into a landscape where your presence is not just noticed but needed. This shift you're walking into, friend, it ain't just about moving away from what hurt you. No, sir. It's about lifting you higher, into rooms and circles and opportunities that already know the weight of what you carry. This is the kind of blessing you can't hustle your way into. You can't schmooze your way into it. This here is heaven's promotion. You're stepping into a chapter where what used to get brushed aside, your wisdom, your ideas, your presence, will now be received as the missing piece everybody was waiting on. What felt like rejection back then was actually redirection. What felt like being invisible was actually the covering of God, keeping you hidden just long enough so nobody could mishandle you before the time was right. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. And now the time is right. What you thought was the end of your story was really just a comma, baby. God was weaving your path all along, leading you through quiet valleys so you'd be ready to stand on the mountaintop without stumbling. And here's the good news. You're about to meet people who don't just clap for what you do, but honor who you are. People who won't just tolerate you, but treasure you. Folks who don't just glance at your surface, but discern the depth of your calling, because they too have been through the fire and learned how to listen above the noise. You were never meant to stay hidden forever. You've been prepared, preserved, and positioned for such a time as this. God is placing you like a city on a hill, where your light can't be covered anymore. You thought you were being overlooked, but really, you were being overbuilt. Built stronger, wiser, deeper. So don't fight the move. Don't cling to old rooms that never saw your value. Don't mourn the branches that had to be cut, because the fruit that's about to come forth from your life, It's going to bless everybody connected to you, and even some who counted you out. This is your moment. Stand tall. Lift your head. Take your place. The table was set for you before you even knew it existed. And now heaven says, it's time that if your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. Here, there will be no need to convince anyone of your worth. No need to diminish yourself to soothe the fragile pride of others. These new rooms will not require you to disguise your brilliance just to keep the peace. The air itself will meet you with readiness before you even speak. Here, standing in your full stature will not feel dangerous. It will feel natural. This environment will not treat your uniqueness as a problem to solve, but as a signal to awaken. Your expansion will no longer stir resistance, but inspiration. The people you encounter in this season won't shrink away from you. They will rise alongside you. They won't perceive your path as a threat to theirs, but as proof that theirs exists too. To arrive here required a dismantling. Pieces of you had to be freed from the weight of places and faces that could not ascend with you. Some attachments were never meant to endure this climb, and their absence is not a loss, but a clearing. What's being prepared now is an opening wide enough to let what you carry move without obstruction. You are walking into alignment with your own peace, with your own purpose, and with those capable of nurturing what has been entrusted to you. You've endured the long silence without letting it sour your spirit. You've stayed diligent even when unseen. And now the time comes not for shallow attention, but for meaningful visibility, not to be applauded, but to be fully positioned. This moment is not merely a relocation. It is the unveiling, and the ones waiting on the other side will not just recognize you. They will stand with you, honor what you bring, and help you build the next chapter of your becoming. It's a question that has burned quietly through countless nights. Why did the path seem so long and solitary? Why were others lifted into the spotlight while you stood in the quiet corners? Why did doors stay shut when you knew you had so much to give? These seasons weren't rejection. They were refuge. What felt like being left behind was actually being kept intact. You weren't being denied your moment. You were being strengthened for it. Those long stretches away from acclaim weren't about keeping you small, but about ensuring you wouldn't be swallowed by spaces unfit to hold you. You were spared from being placed in hands that would have drained your essence, while ignoring the depth it cost you to carry it. Many platforms that glittered from a distance would have hollowed you from the inside. Many circles that appeared inviting would have traded your substance for spectacle. The timing was never about withholding your future. It was about shielding your soul. Your skills may have been ready to be seen, but your roots needed time to dig deeper, to anchor you somewhere steadier than the applause of others. This wasn't just about keeping you unseen. It was about keeping you untainted. You were being guarded from surfaces that looked like progress, but were thin beneath your feet. You were steered away from tables where smiles had daggers, where your brilliance would have been consumed without care for your being. What you didn't hear and didn't see was heard and seen on your behalf. That quiet wilderness was not wasted. It trained you to recognize whispers over noise. It cut ties to false approval. It stripped away the need for shallow validation and showed you how to hold your ground without audience or applause. You learned to give without credit, to trust without proof, to wait without growing bitter. And now, what you once called exile reveals itself as refinement, a sacred kind of preparation. The delay was deliberate. You were carved into someone who could carry what's next without cracking. Being overlooked protected you from counterfeit crowns. Being passed over by people ensured no one could take credit for what was always destined to unfold. This next unveiling isn't about being discovered by the crowd. It's about being released into alignment, step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. You rise not because of popularity, but because purpose demanded it. And when the curtain lifts, it will be unmistakable that what you carry came through patience, not permission. The season of shadows is ending, not because you begged for light, but because you remained steadfast in the quiet. Now comes the call, not for noise, but for true recognition, not to be displayed, but to step fully into what was waiting all along. The time has come, time to be honored, time to be seen, time to emerge. There comes a moment when you realize the ache you carried wasn't about who you are, but about where you were placed. There were seasons when no matter how brightly you burned, those around you seemed unable or unwilling to notice. They didn't grasp the magnitude of what you held, the sincerity behind your efforts, or the quiet weight you bore. You kept wondering, why didn't they stand with me? Why couldn't they understand me? Why did my heart feel invisible here? The answer was simpler than it seemed. They were never meant to see what wasn't for them. Their absence of recognition was not a reflection of your worth, but of their inability to perceive it. They lacked a lens to glimpse the richness you carried, the strength it took to hold it, the depth it demanded of you. Their presence was never about celebrating you, only about walking alongside you for a stretch of the journey. And when that stretch ended, so did their relevance. They were part of the scaffolding, not part of the structure. The sting came from trying to anchor yourself to what was always temporary. You invested forever in those who were only meant to teach you how to let go. When they recoiled at your growth, mistook your quiet for weakness, or labeled your rise as arrogance, it was never because you'd done wrong, but because they were unequipped to bless what they didn't understand. They were never chosen to bear witness to your unfolding. There's mercy even in those closed doors. Certain ties fell away not to punish you, but to shield what was being cultivated in you. Those letdowns taught you how to stand without leaning on fickle approval, how to discern those who came for what you have from those who stay for who you are. The dissonance was necessary to train your spirit to trust what's true over what's loud. What awaits you next is not another trial of proving yourself. The ones you're being aligned with now will require no convincing. They'll carry an unspoken knowing that your presence belongs. There will be no auditions, no explanations, no need to defend your essence. They'll meet you where you are and honor what you've become without suspicion or hesitation. This is what it feels like when connection is divine rather than circumstantial. When you carry something rare, it's natural that not everyone will know how to handle it. Some will shrink, some will fumble, and others will turn away entirely. Not because you were too much, but because you revealed what they weren't ready to confront in themselves. That does not mean you smother your light. It means you guard it until it finds a home where it can flourish. Stop mourning the ones who couldn't behold you. They were never intended to witness your rising. Stop turning over the memories of their leaving. They were never meant to walk this next chapter. What feels like abandonment is really alignment. What feels like loss is the clearing for something better. Ahead of you is a gathering that does not merely accept your presence, but anticipates it. They'll see not just who you are today, but the quiet becoming that shaped you. They'll feel it before you speak. They'll recognize it without needing proof. What's coming was always yours, and now, at last, it draws near. There's a truth quietly waiting beneath the surface of everything. A space was always being prepared with your essence in mind. Not a fleeting chance or borrowed favor, but a setting woven to fit your distinct shape. Not merely somewhere you'd be allowed to exist, but somewhere your presence would complete what was missing. This place does not mistake your differences as flaws. It depends on them. It is not propped up by influence or performance or popularity contests. It was imagined outside the reach of human ambition, crafted patiently for the rhythm you carry, the story you embody, and the weight you've learned to hold. Where others clawed their way into spaces by bending themselves to fit, you chose instead to walk the slower road. You surrendered to the silence. You let yourself be shaped in the shadows. You learned to trust a timing that felt like delay, but was really design. And now, without forcing a single door, the threshold stands open. Not because you demanded it, but because it was always yours to enter. You're stepping into rooms where explanations are unnecessary, where the atmosphere already knows what you bring before you speak, where what you carry is neither doubted nor diminished, but welcomed as the very element that was missing. There's no contest here, no shrinking required, no need to dilute your truth to keep the peace. This moment is not born from pleasing or persuading, but from being placed. Every season spent waiting was not a waste, but a preparation. Not just of a place, but of you. You were being stripped of everything that might have betrayed your calling, sharpened until you could stand in this room without unraveling. That is why the quiet years were mercy, not neglect. They protected both you and the space itself from what would have spoiled it too soon. You need not justify your belonging here. This place already recognizes your arrival. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. What opens now is not because you demanded recognition, but because you refused to betray yourself to be seen. You chose integrity over convenience, depth over applause, and now the ground rises to meet your feet. And the beauty is this: the people being aligned with you have also been prepared. They won't just notice your light, they'll understand its source. They won't resent your depth or ask you to mute your fire. They'll honor it as a reflection of what they've also been waiting for. You won't have to compress your spirit or hold back your intensity to fit. Here, you'll be understood without translation, celebrated without competition, supported without condition. This moment was never random, it's a culmination. The space has already been cleared of noise, the distractions dismantled, the counterfeits removed, and the true order established. This isn't luck or accident, it's fulfillment. The waiting is over. The doors have opened. The place is ready. And you, at last, step into what has been waiting patiently for you all along. What is unfolding now is more than progress. It is a complete elevation of your being. This isn't just another chapter turning or a casual shift of scenery. What rises before you now is nothing less than a sacred advancement, tailored to honor what you've carried quietly all along. This isn't random motion. It's the evidence of unseen seeds breaking through the soil. You are not merely stepping into a new place. You are stepping into the fullness of who you already are, revealed and acknowledged without disguise. This is not a minor adjustment or a surface-level refresh. It is a redefinition. You are being lifted from tolerated to trusted, from dismissed to destined, from invisible to undeniable. The story you thought had been written without your say is being rewritten in front of those who once tried to keep you small. The moments you endured in silence, the betrayals you swallowed, the dismissals you carried without protest, they are being answered now by something far beyond vindication. Your rise is not fueled by revenge, but by restoration. You need not explain. You need not defend. This elevation itself speaks louder than any argument could. What's happening is not pettiness. It is a holy kind of justice. Every time you were told you weren't enough is being answered now with a resounding affirmation that you've always been more than enough. Where doors were once locked to you, new paths are opening on their own. Where your name was erased, it is now written into spaces you haven't even entered yet. What's transforming is not just your surroundings, but also the recognition of what's been within you all along. This is an upgrade both internal and external, both a revealing and a rising. It's not simply that the environment is shifting. It's that your essence is finally being met with honor it was always worthy of. You have carried grace through storms, kept faith through shadows, chosen humility when you could have demanded, stayed rooted when you could have run. And because of that, the timing has ripened. This isn't an endorsement from people. It's an unveiling by something greater. What comes now is not something you'll have to protect with pretense or preserve through constant proving. What you're being given in this moment is anchored by grace, not performance. You won't need to fight to keep it, because it's already aligned with who you are at your core. You have shown that your devotion matters more than a platform, that your integrity matters more than applause. And now it's time to walk boldly. Walk with gratitude, with quiet authority, with clarity. This is no longer about striving. It is about stepping into what has always been waiting for you. You are no longer unseen, no longer diminished, no longer squeezed into spaces too small for your spirit. You have arrived fully, and the place prepared for you is ready to hold you, completely, securely, without compromise. This is your divine advancement, the kind you don't chase, but are chosen for. Let the whispers come. Let them wonder. Let them watch. But understand this. You are not returning to where you came from, and you will not shrink to ease their discomfort. This season is not just a shift. It's the embodiment of what you've endured for. And you are not settling. You are soaring.